First Class Productions.
In 1988, Castlevania was released for the NES in Europe, arriving here later than in Japan and North America. By that point, players overseas had already spent years memorizing enemy patterns, cursing at knockback deaths, and learning to fear stares. But for European gamers, this was the beginning of something special. A wickedly difficult platformer that kicked off one of Konami's most legendary franchises. It was challenging, atmospheric, and most importantly, it let you whip monsters in the face. Naturally, it became a classic. But I didn't play Castlevania as a kid. In fact, I didn't even know we owned it until one day I found the instruction manual at my late grandma's house. No game cartridge, no box, just a lonely booklet full of pixelated monsters and cryptic item descriptions. Somewhere in my family's past, Castlevania had existed or even haunted us, and then vanished without a trace. Years later, I finally reviewed Castlevania in 2010, and unlike most of my early videos, it actually had a similar structure as my modern reviews. I played through the entire game, showed the highlights and chewed out the hunchbacks for good measure. It was a rare glimpse into the format I use today. But here's something I never knew. Castlevania wasn't actually the first Castlevania Europe saw. That honor belongs to Vampire Killer on the MSX2, which launched here either in 1986 or 1987 depending on the source. What makes this even more mysterious is that Castlevania and Vampire Killer were developed almost simultaneously by Konami, but instead of a single unified release, they ended up as two distinct games with different mechanics, structures, and even regional launch dates. While Japan and North America got Castlevania first, Europe's intro to the franchise came through Vampire Killer, a game that despite sharing a lot of traits, didn't even use the Castlevania branding. And unlike Castlevania, Vampire Killer never came out in North America at all. We'll take a look at Vampire Killer in the next video, but today we solely focus on Castlevania, the one most people actually know. Join me as I find out whether Castlevania still holds up 15 years after my original review.
GFrom, the gamer, the legend, he's come to show you the way in this world of games. GFrom Reviews.
Let's talk about the gameplay, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. But hey, for that one person that's never heard of Castlevania, here's the rundown. You play as Simon Belmont, a vampire hunter who's armed with nothing but a whip and a whole lot of determination. Basically the Indiana Jones of the undead. Your job? To brave a bunch of side-scrolling levels filled with all manner of horror movie monsters and defeat the evil Dracula himself. Simple, right? The game takes place in the late 1600s. Naturally, Simon's got to take down Dracula without modern technology, relying on his trusty whip. Because nothing says Vampire Slayer like a silly bit of rope. The controls are as basic as they come. You move Simon left and right, jump with one button and whip with the other. No fancy combos here in terms of your melee attacks, just a lot of good old-fashioned whipping. Every successful crack feels like a tiny victory over the forces of evil. When you press up along with attack, you unleash a special sub-weapon. Just don't get cocky because the enemies will absolutely ruin your day at the slightest misstep. Candles aren't just for spooky ambience, they're your gateway to power-ups. Smash them to snag goodies like hearts, holy water, axes, and more. Speaking of hearts, these aren't your Valentine's Day kind. In Castlevania, hearts are the currency for your sub-weapons. You'll find small hearts and even large ones with 5 little ones tucked inside. You can stock up as long as you stay alive, but there's more hidden in those candles and sometimes even in suspicious-looking walls. Money bags, each color with its own score value, and if you're lucky or just really desperate, health-restoring pork chops. Because there's nothing like a tasty snack mid-battle. Where Castlevania truly spices things up is with the sub-weapons. The dagger just flies straight and it's the least spectacular one. You just yeet. Then you've got holy water, basically a Molotov cocktail for the undead, splashing fire everywhere. Ah, holy gasoline. Then you have throwing axes. It's like you're auditioning for the Expendables, great for flying enemies. The cross is a boomerang-like projectile that hits on the way out and on the return. Finally, finally, there's the stopwatch, which freezes time for a few seconds. Handy if you want to be extra dramatic when dodging enemy attacks, or just need a moment to reflect on your life choices. Just remember the watch costs 5 hearts per use.
Never waste hearts. Once they're gone, you're stuck with your trusty whip until you earn more.
The whip is the real star of the show. Sure, you've got all those sub-weapons, but deep down, you're here for that iconic weapon. Starting out, Simon's whip is a basic, puny leather lash that barely does the job. As you quest on, you can upgrade it, first into a short chain and then into the full-blown vampire killer. Each upgrade not only boosts its reach and power, but also makes every swing feel all the more satisfying. Just don't get too comfortable. Die and you lose your fancy upgrade and you're stuck with that sad little piece of leather all over again. And let's not forget the hidden surprises scattered throughout Dracula's castle. If you're really thorough or just incredibly lucky, you might stumble upon secret items like extra lives or temporary invincibility power-ups. There's even the elusive double shot and triple shot, which ramp up your sub-weapon firepower so you can launch 2 or even 3 projectiles at once. Because sometimes one projectile just isn't enough and we want to be fancy. Just a heads up, if you pick up a different sub-weapon, you lose your double or triple shot boost, so plan your pickups carefully. Sometimes secrets aren't just hiding behind a breakable wall. Castlevania loves to mess with your head by making you perform cryptic actions to reveal its hidden treasures. You might need to crouch or stand still at a specific spot to make items appear. Like the game's way of saying, hey, think outside the box. Or the wall. These puzzles can leave you scratching your head, but once you crack the code or use a guide, you're rewarded with bonuses that can be a lifesaver when a swarm of hunchbacks come blundering your way.
Now let's talk about the Grim Reaper's favorite moment.
Death.
Castlevania doesn't offer a password system to save your progress, but fear not. There are infinite continues. That said, each level is divided into different stages, and when you hit a game over, you're sent back to the beginning of that level. All the progress, points, and power-ups you painstakingly gathered, gone in a flash. It's a brutal, unforgiving reminder that in the world of Castlevania, death is always lurking around the corner, ready to wipe your hard-earned progress and force you to start the level over from scratch. Don't play if you have a big ego.
With all the basics out of the way, let's bite into the real meat of Castlevania. By now I've clocked in enough hours in Dracula's castle to know some secrets and share some tips that might just save you from needless frustration. Well, it'll save you from some of the needless frustration.
Block 1 kicks off right outside Dracula's ominous fortress. The very first secret is trickier than it appears. You need to pull off a perfectly timed jump past the castle door to reveal a money bag. More often than not, my timing is off and Simon ends up strolling right through the door instead. This can even happen on your way back, so keep your reflexes sharp. Once inside, it's ghouls on parade. An endlessly respawning parade. Don't worry, they're the easiest enemies in the game, especially if you've managed to fully upgrade your whip outside. But then the panthers make their debut. The nimble beasts leap at you when you get too close. They're fast, so the best strategy is to hit them from a distance or simply jump over them if you fancy a bit of acrobatics. You encounter the infamous stairs. The bane of every Castlevania player. More on those later. Striking a particular block near the stairs rewards you with a money bag. When you wander through the next set of doors, you'll enter a new stage that conveniently acts as your checkpoint. A brief respite in this relentless castle. Stage 2 introduces red bats that flutter in a wave-like pattern. They're slow enough to be easily dispatched, so consider them a warm-up. Peek inside one of the walls and you might find a pork chop waiting for you, because apparently even vampires get hangry. Down the stairs, fishmen leap out of the water, marking the game's first insta-death pits. Be cautious when jumping between platforms. One hit not only knocks you back, but also sends Simon tumbling into the abyss.
How's that fair? You get knocked back when you take a hit, causing you to fall into the pit.
Now here's where Castlevania really starts to test your mettle. The next secret is a real brainbuster. Destroy a specific block and then crouch down for a few seconds to coax a money bag into appearing. But be quick, hesitate too long and it'll vanish like your hopes of victory. Before the first boss showdown, don't miss the chance to pick up the axe in stage 3. Destroy a block near the stairs and you'll snag a coveted double shot boost for your sub-weapon. The first boss is a giant bat.
Because, of course, what better way to kick things off than with a textbook horror cliché?
It flaps around, occasionally swooping down to invade your personal space. But honestly, it's barely a step up from the regular bats you've already dealt with. Just chunkier and slightly more annoying. If you grabbed the axe earlier, you're in for an easy win. Just stand in a good spot, chuck axes upward and watch it crumble like wet cardboard.
The double shot can obliterate its health bar.
Once defeated, the infamous glowing orb appears, refilling your health and officially ending the first block of levels. It's simple, straightforward, and gives you just enough time to settle into the game's rhythm before things really start ramping up. You get a taste of the core mechanics, the enemies are manageable, the platforming isn't too punishing yet, and the first boss is more of a warm-up stretch than a real threat. It's a solid introduction that sets the tone for what's to come, but don't get too comfy. Block 2 turns everything on its side. Literally, it's vertical. Instead of simply marching forward, you now have to climb several towers, making careful platforming even more important. Right at the start, there's a hidden crown you can snag for 2,000 points. Just smash some blocks, step inside, and boom, instant riches.
Of course, points only really matter for extra lives and raw greed, but hey, free stuff is free stuff.
The first screen also introduces 2 new enemies. The Spear Knight is the first enemy that actually takes more than one hit, which is a bold new concept for this game.
Remember, this is the mid-80s.
Spear buddies don't attack, they just exist, like an armored obstacle in your way. Then there's the Black Bat that's faster than the red bats from before. It just hovers there, waiting for you to get close before making its move. These things will surprise you if you're not careful, but nothing a quick whip can't handle. Here's a block with a double shot. You really want this. The boomerang works wonders against the pesky Spear Knights guarding the other side of the pit. And speaking of pits, this is also where we see our first moving platform. Get used to them, because they're about to become a staple of your Castlevania suffering. Ah, Medusa heads.
I mentioned in my original review that they've never been a problem for me, and somehow that wasn't a flex, it's just true, at least in this game.
Their pattern follows a simple arc and they always come head on from the direction you're facing. So, word of advice, don't turn around unless you want a personal attack squad up your business. They also seem to spawn at the same height as you, so if you position yourself smartly, you can manipulate their spawn point.
Of course, if you panic when they show up near pits, well,
They can smell your fear.
Need a breather? Stop at this exact spot for a few seconds to make a chest appear. If the floating heads drained your health, there's a savory pork chop hidden in a block nearby. One here and another at the start of stage 6. Stock up. Before reaching the next section, however, we get our first real taste of tricky platforming. Jumping between moving platforms takes some getting used to. Because let's face it, Simon Belmont has the agility of a brick. He can't change direction mid-jump, so once you commit, you're committed. There's no mid-air correction for this poor fool. No second chances, just gravity and regret. Then we get to the weird looking spikes. Or maybe they're guillotines? Blades? Giant angry cheese wedges? Whatever they are, they move up and down and you'll need the right timing to slip past them.
if you've got the stopwatch, this section is a joke.
Just remember, the second one has a different pattern. Because as you're learning, Castlevania loves to mess with you. To make things worse, a ghost haunts the corridor, slowly following you around like an ex you blocked months ago. It's not fast, but it's annoying. There's another multiplier in a block nearby. We're introduced to another Castlevania classic, Bone Towers. These stationary enemies spit fireballs at you, but luckily you can destroy their projectiles with your whip. They even flash right before shooting as a signal, so if you're paying attention, you've got just enough time to react. Take them out quickly, and if you're lucky, you might even get a screen-clearing Holy Cross from one of them. Now for the boss, Medusa. And if you have Holy Water, she might just be the easiest boss in the game. As soon as she appears, just spam the ever-loving hell out of it and she'll be stuck in place, paralyzed. It's actually kinda sad. She turns men into stone for a living, but here, she becomes the statue. I actually like this set of levels even more than the first. The challenge is ramping up, but it's still fair. The game starts to introduce more movement-based obstacles, trickier enemies, and those infamous Medusa heads, but none of it feels outright unfair yet. It's still testing you, but it's a reasonable test.
Enjoy that while it lasts, because it won't.
In Block 3, Simon finds himself outside in a gloomy courtyard, a whole new arena of gothic torment. This is where you face off with one of my personal nemeses, a creature that might look like a monkey at first glance, but it's a flea man, a hunchback, or whatever you wanna call it. Their movements are as unpredictable as a toddler on a sugar rush. For the first few encounters, step carefully. Wait until they make their move, then slash. match. Not to be outdone, skeletons join the party. They jump around haphazardly and even toss bones at you. How tacky. Fortunately, they're easier to dispatch than those pesky hunchbacks, though every hit now costs you 3 health bars instead of 2. Just when you think you've seen it all, ravens swoop in for the kill. Their attack patterns are mostly predictable, but near pits, they can really screw with your timing. Hidden secrets continue to pop up too. There's another kneeling spot where if you're bored enough to test it out, you can reveal a secret money bag. This is a perfect example of how the Medusa heads are surprisingly easy to avoid. You can simply jump over them as they fly at you. Just duck here for a sec and you get another secret money bag. My weapon of choice in this block is the boomerang, which is pretty much the bane of those bone towers. For some inexplicable reason, a money bag appears when you walk towards this block, but there's no way to get it. It just floats there mid-air, teasing my broke ass.
I used to think the boss was the hard part, but these 2 mummies really turn out to be pushovers if you play it right.
First, grab the meat from the block nearby. Then if you got the triple shot, spam the hell out of your boomerangs. Make it rain. Especially if you hit them when they overlap, their health seems to go down even faster. They go down within seconds, but it was a close one nonetheless. The third block ends on a high note of challenge and intrigue. The courtyard and tower bridge serve up a medley of unpredictable enemies and sneaky secrets. With tougher foes like the hunchbacks and those meddlesome ravens, it's a new kind of test for your reflexes. It not only intensifies the action, but also forces you to adapt to new enemy behaviors and platforming challenges. Conquer these hurdles and you're one step closer to mastering Dracula's cursed domain. Oh no! Gravity! Simon must have ankles of steel. Block 4 takes you deep underground into a realm where the darkness is thick and the platforms are your only friend. Spooky doesn't even begin to cover it. This poor dude didn't make it. First up, familiar foes from Block 1 make a reappearance, bats and fishermen. But this time you're battling them on moving platforms. And trust me, Simon falls off those edges faster than you can say Vampire Slayer. It's like he got cement in his shoes. The worst part is that he inspired other heroes to follow in his footsteps. Outside again comes a part that isn't as gnarly as it looks. Here, eagles carrying hunchbacks swoop in by the dozens. There's a neat little trick. Move forwards, stop when they drop, duck and whip, then keep moving. That method keeps you mostly unscathed, though a splash of holy water never hurts for extra protection. But hold on to your whip, because next comes the Bone Dragon. Don't let its stationary nature fool you. These creepy critters are stuck in the wall, but they're not decorative. They shoot fireballs and wriggle around like they've got itchy backs or something. Keeping your distance is key here, and if you have boomerangs, you know what to do. Oh, and where the second Bone Dragon was, you might just find a hidden pork chop to refuel your battered spirit and withered tummy.
Now brace yourselves for the grand finale of Block 4. Frankenstein's monster and Igor.
These two used to give me a real headache, Igor in particular.
Igor, who looks just like any other hunchback, throws tomatoes at you, constantly. And he can't die.
The secret to making this fight a non-issue? Triple shot holy water. Just park Simon on these blocks and keep splashing that holy water like there's no tomorrow. In roughly 5 seconds, those monsters are nothing more than a soggy memory. What a joke. Block 4 is a relentless test of skill. With treacherous moving platforms and foes that seem determined to knock you into the abyss, it's hard on the nerves. Yet, with precise timing and clever use of sub-weapons, you emerge victorious. This block is arguably my favorite.
Back when I played this game for my 2010 review, Block 5 drove me up a wall. A wall with no meat inside, to be clear.
Right from the start, in the castle's main hall, hunchbacks and skeletons make their unholy reappearance. Every hit now saps a full 4 bars of health.
The level wastes no time getting unholier. Unholified? Is that a word? It is now.
First off, a pro tip. If you walk up against that particular wall, a very rare 1-up will materialize below. Snatch it fast or watch it evaporate into the ether. There's also a shot multiplier tucked away in a block, or in my case, a money bag. Why are these skeletons red? They don't throw bones and they're excruciatingly slow, but here's the brutal twist. They simply can't die. Insane, right? These undead tryhards keep getting up and they won't leave you alone. I find them more tedious than anything anything else. At least there's a pork chop nearby to soothe your wounded pride. If there's one foe I dread, it's the Axe Knights. These guys aren't just formidable, they literally hurl axes at 2 different levels, high and low. You could destroy the axes, which is handy. The trick on this screen? Make the first one step off the screen and then hit the second with some well-timed holy hydration. It's essential to conserve your holy water here, so wait for that axe to disappear. There's another hidden money bag that appears when you approach a wall, but naturally, those crimson skeletons are hot on your heels. Your best bet is to lure them away first so that you can safely hug the wall and claim your reward. And while you're at it, don't miss the extra cash you get when you get on that platform and even more hidden wall meat.
Trust me, every little boost counts.
The final hallway had me shaking with dread when I first tackled it. The combined threat of Axe Knights and Medusa heads is not to be underestimated.
Here, I finally understand people's fear of those snaky heads.
My strategy nowadays? Rush through by throwing holy water and sprinting past the frozen knights. This way you can clear the corridor in about 10 seconds flat.
Then comes maybe the hardest part of the game, or so I used to think.
The Grim Reaper not only floats ominously, but also summons sickles that relentlessly track you down. No escape, no mercy.
That's the most unforgiving boss in history. These things come from everywhere and reappear constantly. And the most boring part about this is that you have to repeat the hallway every time you die.
Once again, holy water is your best ally. If you manage to catch the spectral menace at the start and keep dousing it with that magical elixir, he gets stun locked. He won't even begin to move or worse unleashes deadly sickles. Hard to believe I once spent hours battling this guy. Block 5 is a roller coaster of torment and triumph. With attacks that take more health than ever and enemies that just refuse to die, it's a true test of your tactical prowess. Yet, with a few smart moves, you turn what used to be a soul-crushing experience into a manageable, even exhilarating challenge. In my younger days, this level was torture.
I'm in a bad mood. I could throw the controller into the TV. I could slap a parrot.
But now, armed with triple shot holy water and a bit of know-how, it feels like a conquered beast. The main hall may be relentless, but every victory here proves that with strategy and precision, even the most maddening level can be mastered. Block 6 is where the game really tests your mettle, and it kicks off on the clock tower bridge.
I wanted to say it'll grind your gears, but it didn't seem like the right time.
Here you're forced to leap over gaping chasms, dodging giant bats along the way. What used to be the first boss turned into a common nuisance. Fighting them is almost pointless, so I usually just sprint through, but I still end up taking 1 or 2 hits despite my best efforts. I still need to refine my technique here. Inside the clock tower you encounter a cranky skeleton. Just stroll to the right and let it lumber towards you. But hold on, because things soon get maddeningly frustrating. Why? Well, have you ever been ambushed by eagles dropping a horde of hunchbacks on you while you're trying to go about your day strolling up the stairs? No? I envy you. Amid the chaos, a hidden pork chop is handy for a quick health boost, though sometimes it's just better to leave it be. Yeah, let it rot. There are 2 screens of this insanity, and on the second, for all you completionists, a bonus money bag awaits. It's not impossible, but it demands considerable patience and perhaps a little luck. Next, you have a moment to prepare for the final showdown. In Dracula's tower, there's an abundance of candles waiting to be whipped. They're just into that kind of thing, I guess. No shame. Anyway, if you go back and retrace your steps, these candles respawn, so load up as many hearts as you can. The clock is ticking, but I've never found myself short on time. So I spent roughly 4 minutes maxing out my hearts to 99, even if I probably won't need all that extra power. Better safe than sorry.
But now it's on. Now it's time to end the game. It's time to kill the douchebag I'm after. Oh no! Forgot to push down. I got to Dracula and died before I even saw him. That's pathetic.
Finally, it's time to face Dracula himself, the meanest son of a blood drinker in all the land. I enter this epic battle armed with triple shot holy water, though for this particular phase, the boomerang is actually a better fit. The Dark Lord teleports around and hurls 3 fireballs at the time, with his only weak spot being his head. It's completely random where he'll appear, so it's not always wise to go for an attack. Sometimes you'll have to slash the fireballs to avoid taking damage, and other times you'll be able to hop between them. This fight is an endurance test, seemingly interminable struggle. I've never never manage to defeat him without taking a hit. When he spawns right next to you, it feels downright cheap and nearly impossible to escape. After what feels like centuries, you can finally slam Dracula's freaking head through the room and he appears defeated, only for a second form to emerge.
I hate you! Damn! This sucks! I'd rather buy shoes with 3 women! Die! Ah!
This is where your holy water really shines. You know the drill, keep spamming it and Dracula never has a chance to do anything. You just interrupt him like he's an annoying party guest, oversharing about his bloody desires and insecurities. In under a minute, assuming you don't mess it up, the Prince of Darkness is finally vanquished. Without question, he's the hardest boss in the game, at least the first phase. The battle's length and repetitive nature can be fatiguing. Dracula's attacks aren't exactly innovative and the fight can drag on tediously. Nevertheless, the sweet, hard-won satisfaction of defeating him makes it all worthwhile. Also, in a rare instance of mercy, you start at the boss when you die and don't have to repeat the entire stage. Very considerate. Block 6 is the ultimate test of perseverance. From the nerve-wracking jumps and hostile clock tower bridge to the maddening barrage of hunchbacks and the punching final battle, every moment is designed to push you to your limits. Sure, the gauntlet can be infuriatingly unforgiving, but with strategic use of your holy water, savvy timing and a bit of patience, you can overcome even the most exasperating challenges. In the end, the castle crumbles and of course we get the credits, which are just some silly fictitious names based on horror movie icons. I feel kinda bad for the real developers not having their actual names here, but they all probably thought this was hilarious. As you watch this sequence, you're left with the undeniable thrill of having conquered what once felt like an insurmountable mountain of torment. It's a grueling journey, not without suffering, but the victory is all the sweeter when you know you've truly mastered the final stretch.
As with many games from this era, Castlevania has a second quest, a remixed, harder version of the game that takes place right after your hard-fought victory over Dracula.
You start over at block 1, but this time everything's tougher. From the outset, enemies pack a bigger punch, draining 4 bars of health per hit. Even though block 1 in the second quest is noticeably harder than the original, it still feels like a warm-up compared to what lies ahead.
If you thought you'd seen every secret before, think again. There are new ones hidden here for the sharp-eyed explorer.
On the very first screen, duck in front of the statue to trigger a money bag. Stand by a window for a few seconds and watch extra cash materialize. Just like how it works in real life. And here you even get a 1-up when you walk against a certain block. I nearly got caught off guard by the boss here. Without the axe, that battle is a serious trial. Block 2 represents the steepest difficulty spike. The Medusas are faster and far more aggressive. Dodging them becomes an art. In terms of secrets, there are 3 new ones. First, you'll discover some wall calories tucked away near the beginning. Then a bizarre item appears when you leap over to a movable platform. And the piece de resistance, a 1-up that pops up when you stand between these cheese wedges. The Medusas make that 1-up nearly impossible to snag without taking damage. With a few liters of holy water, the boss is as simple as before. Block 3 is definitely also more of a challenge this time. Medusa hits right at the start? Even faster ghosts? Give me a break! The bone towers now fire their projectiles at a breakneck pace and every second counts. This block offers 3 new secrets. Crouch here to claim an ominous 4,000 point bonus. I don't care what it is as long as it boosts the score. Snag a multiplier here if you're not already maxed out. And finally, discover another 4k point treasure under the stairs. I got extremely lucky at the mummies. It went smoothly at first, but then I took way too many hits. If you have the chance to lure them together, you've got a real chance at flushing these TP fools. To my surprise, Block 4 didn't introduce many new hurdles. It's largely a rehash of the previous experience. Sure, there are now bats at this part with the eagles, but they're fairly manageable. From what I can tell, there aren't any new secrets here. The tactic for dealing with Frankenstein's monster and Igor remains the same. Block 5 in the second quest feels almost identical to its predecessor. Aside from a hidden multiplier wedged in a wall, there's nothing here to see. Pretty much rushed through this one as well, and gave death a hard time once again. Finally, Block 6, where everything comes full circle. Looks like another copy-paste job. As the first run was difficult enough already, I'm not complaining. The battle against Dracula feels like deja vu. In this harder mode, I managed to take down the Dark Lord a bit faster than before. So while I like the idea of having a harder mode, I was disappointed that the new features tapered off after Block 4. It's as if the developers lost a bit of steam halfway through this bonus run. Still, the overall experience is a masterclass in escalating tension tension and design ingenuity.
Looking back, I can't help but wish I could show this to my younger self.
All those hours of patience and the countless failures, they finally paid off.
Let's talk about one of my favorite aspects of this game, the music and sound.
If you were to strip Castlevania down to just its visuals and gameplay, it would still be a classic. But add the sound design, the crisp punchy effects and the unforgettable 8-bit soundtrack, and suddenly Castlevania transforms from a great game into an all-time legend. From the moment you press start, the game announces itself with an atmosphere thick enough to cut with a whip. Unlike some sound palettes from the time, every sound effect here is designed for impact, from the sharp snap of Simon's whip to the eerie clatter of breaking candles. Picking up hearts, weapons and multipliers produces a bright, triumphant chime. But one thing you might not notice at first is the disturbing silence of Simon's movement. His jumps make no sound. No whoosh, no thud upon landing, just total quiet. It's a little odd considering how weighty and deliberate his movements feel. In a game with such a rich sound design, Simon Belmont moves like a ghost. The enemies share this trait. No roars, no growls, no screeches, just silence as they hunt you down. Medusa heads glide through the air without a peep, and even the relentless red skeletons crumble into a heap without so much as a crack. You'd expect shattered bones to make some kind of dry, brittle crack when they collapse, but no, nothing.
As great as the sound effects are, it's the music that turns Castlevania into something truly magical.
This isn't just background noise. This is a full-fledged, pulse-pounding gothic rock opera, composed within the rigid limitations of the NES sound chip. Instead of being bound by those limitations, Castlevania's composer Kinuyo Yamashita turned them into strengths, delivering a soundtrack bursting with energy, tension, and gothic grandeur. The moment you step into the castle, the music isn't just good, it's iconic. These tracks don't just accompany the action, they drive it. No return. The fast tempos, soaring melodies, and rich harmonies keep the adrenaline pumping as you push deeper into Dracula's domain. There's a sense of urgency in the compositions, as if the game itself is egging you on, daring you to keep going. And yet, despite their high energy, the melodies have a melancholic, almost elegant quality perfectly fitting for a game dripping with classic horror influences. What's even more impressive is how the soundtrack balances its moods. Some tracks fill you with heroic determination, making you feel like you can take on the horrors ahead. Others pull you deeper into the castle's sinister depths, reminding you that this place is teeming with monsters who want nothing more than to end your journey right then and there. The way the music shifts between these emotions, sometimes within the same track, is nothing short of masterful. And let's not forget the boss fight themes. When you reach a boss, the music changes, signaling that this is where things get serious. These pieces hit with a heavier, more menacing tone, reinforcing the idea that you're tangling with something ferocious. In an era where many NES games had serviceable but forgettable soundtracks, Castlevania dared to create something more, something that stuck with players long after they turned the console off. The game's music doesn't just set the mood, it is the mood. It's what turns an already challenging adventure into an unforgettable, heart-pounding experience.
There are a few tracks so legendary, so ingrained into the identity of the franchise that they deserve a closer look. Here are my top 5 songs from Castlevania.
Number 5. Right after the first stage, Stalker kicks in with a frantic pace, making it clear this castle isn't letting up. The rapid bass line feels like something's creeping behind you, while the sharp melody keeps you on edge. Even the beat's kinda twitchy, like it's always waiting to really start. It's not just an action theme, it's a warning. Number 4. As you near the end, Heart of Fire throws you into the chaos with an urgent, driving rhythm. The pulsing bass and sharp, relentless melody mirror the rising tension. Dracula is close and there's no turning back. It's a perfect mix of dread and determination, so it's hard to put down the controller. Number 3. From the moment you step into Dracula's cursed domain, Vampire Killer sets the tone. Its energetic melody and pounding rhythm makes it one of the most iconic tracks in gaming history. It's fast, it's fierce, and it urges you onward, whip in hand, ready to take on the horrors of the night. This isn't just background music, it's a battle cry. Number 2. Wicked Child dials up the intensity with a fast-paced, almost chaotic melody that perfectly suits the treacherous ascent through the castle. The wild bass line and sharp climbing notes create a sense of urgency, making every jump, whip crack, and enemy encounter feel like part of a relentless struggle. It's energetic, it's exhilarating, and it keeps the adrenaline pumping as you press onward. Number 1. Out of Time stands as one of the most striking tracks in Castlevania, blending energy and dread. Its upbeat tempo, driven by energetic percussion and unforgettable melodies, create an intense atmosphere as Simon nears Dracula's lair. It's a standout, and to me it's the absolute highlight of the soundtrack.
Let's wrap this up.
Castlevania stands as a timeless classic, an iconic representation of 8-bit gaming that strikes a perfect balance between challenge and reward. From its atmospheric, creepy visuals to its unforgettable soundtrack, the game leaves a lasting impression on anyone who plays it. It's not just about the music or the monsters, it's about the journey itself, the battle to master every jump and every whiplash. While I find the game to be visually kinda ugly compared to other NES titles from the time, with some parts of the castle looking a bit dull, its technical and gameplay strengths shine through. The controls in Castlevania are stiff, but that's part of what makes the game so satisfying. Simon Belmont's movements feel deliberate and heavy, making every jump and attack feel like it takes precision. His whip, though useful, has a very specific range, requiring you to get up close and personal with your enemies, right in their ugly faces. This precision forces you to be strategic with every encounter. It may feel frustrating at first, especially when trying to avoid death by Medusa heads or axe knights, but once you get the hang of it, there's a rewarding sense of mastery that comes with it.
As for difficulty, Castlevania is notorious for being tough, and rightfully so.
It's relentless, punishing players for every misstep while rewarding them for persistence. It remains a great example of how difficulty should be handled in a game. Challenging but fair. Something Castlevania pulls off masterfully. Unlike, say, Sonic 2 on Game Gear, which often felt punishing in the worst possible way. The game's difficulty escalates in a way that keeps you on your toes. One wrong move and you'll lose precious health. But the game rarely feels abusive. Each death serves as a lesson, teaching you to think strategically. Whether it's how to handle the ever-present Medusa heads, navigating platforming sections, or making use of the limited sub-weapons. It's important to make strategic use of those sub-weapons and keep the multipliers. Item management can be the difference between life and death. The second quest ramps things up further, throwing more enemies your way, but it's all part of the challenge. When I played Castlevania for my 2010 review, the difficulty was almost overwhelming. I struggled with many sections, unable to juggle the enemies and platforming challenges.
The worst thing of all is the getting knocked back when you're hit bullshit. In a game with that many pits, it's a flaw that makes grown men cry like babies.
But over the years, I've come to truly understand the game's mechanics. I've learned how to predict enemy behavior, how to make the most of Simon's whip and sub-weapons, and how to approach each level with a more calculated mindset. Now, what once seemed like insurmountable obstacles feel much more manageable. I don't think I'll ever be able to pull off a flawless run without taking a single hit, but I'm at peace with myself in that regard.
I'm growing up.
The level design also contributes to the difficulty, with tight jumps, hidden secrets, and enemies that demand careful attention. The added challenge of deploying health and items through these sections keeps the stakes high, but that's what makes completing the game feel so satisfying.
One thing I almost forgot to mention, but absolutely deserves a shout out, is the stairs.
Yes, the infamous Castlevania stairs. In this first game, they're already a little fuzzy. You have to press diagonally to properly latch onto them. If you don't, Simon just casually strolls off the edge like he's on a sightseeing tour of Dracula's basement. But oddly enough, I don't think they're that big of a problem here. The level design usually gives you enough space and time to approach stairs carefully, so while the controls controls are a bit awkward, it doesn't lead to constant disaster.
That would come later. In future games, staircases become full-blown death traps.
Here, they're just slightly annoying. Consider this your polite introduction to the ongoing Castlevania stair trauma that's waiting down the line. And then there's the soundtrack. The music is an integral part of Castlevania's identity. It heightens the tension and the feeling of dread, while also serving as a triumphant call when you overcome a particularly gritty section. Each track is memorable and adds another layer to the game's atmosphere, making every moment feel like it matters. Nowadays you can play it as part of the Castlevania Anniversary Collection. Ultimately, Castlevania is a perfect storm of fun gameplay, grueling difficulty, and an atmospheric soundtrack. It's a game that doesn't hand you anything, it forces you to earn it. And once you've mastered it, the blessings are all the sweeter.
It might not be my favorite game in the franchise, but it's one that I deeply love and can revisit any day. Castlevania is a masterpiece that defies death and continues to stand the test of time.
Hey everyone, this is GFrom. Thank you so much for watching episode 5 of season 5. Feel free to rate, comment, subscribe and follow me on social media. You can also support me on Patreon if you like. I'll see you later. Have a nice day.